So I've always been a little stubborn. As John will, a little bit. Well, it is wonderful to be back with you all this morning, and I'm greatly appreciative of sitting in the quiet. There's not a lot of quiet in my life these days with a...
We hear that giggle.
Yes, you hear the giggle as to part of that reason. But it is, I was trying to think as we were driving here this morning, the last time I was with you all, and I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. It's been
by video.
Yes, yeah. Oh yeah, it was during COVID. Yeah,
Right.
It's been quite a while, and I have this picture from this very spot of me standing up here speaking and Ava Gray sitting in that chair looking up at me. And I go back to that picture a lot when I'm, stepping on a Lego for the 10th time that day, or there's glitter caked into my fireplace, and I want to kind of maybe strangle my child with love. But I go back to that memory, and I remember that day and being very worried at my then 3-year-old daughter, who was standing up with me and coloring and going, oh my gosh, they're not going to invite me back. Like, this child is thwarting everybody's worship. And then afterwards, someone showing me that picture, and in that moment feeling very loved and held by you all, and knowing that all that I am and all my daughter is welcome. So thank y'all. Her very energetic self.
Thank you.
When Mary first emailed me about coming back to share and worship with you all, and we confirmed the date, and she made the request of, you're coming on in February, we want to do something for Black History Month, and I have to be a little honest, that I initially went, I don't think I'm the right person for this. You see, I know that is a good, necessary focus. That it's important to lift up the voices and stories of Black bodies and to examine our own relationship with whiteness. But it made me uncomfortable because I had my kind of aha moment during my time at Wake Divinity. I was taking a course then, theological anthropology, and it was focused around the story of the Good Samaritan. And the title of that thing was like, Who is Your Neighbor? So we studied Latin American liberation theology and Black liberation theology, and there was one afternoon, I was sitting on our front porch, and I was reading a book called Enfleshing Freedom by M. Sean Copeland. And in that book, she talks about the stories, particularly of Black women's bodies. And I'm sitting beside my then 3-4-year-old daughter, who has her Pete the Cat book and is kind of flipping through it and reading. And she looks up at me and she says, Mommy, tell me what you're reading. Share your book with me. And I looked at her and I went, I can't do that. These are horrific. Like, I can't give this to you to hold at such a young age. And I went back to class the next day and I was discussing this, and a colleague of mine went, I don't get that choice. She said, I have to tell my Black son these stories. I don't get to choose whether or not I do that. And it was at 26 years old, it was this, oh, right. I get to choose whether or not I share these stories. And so it was kind of the beginning of starting to unpack all of this for me. And then I left school. I re-entered full-time employment. Ava Gray grew up and will quickly pass me height-wise in lots of other ways. But she now has homework and violin practice every night, and life got just busier, or at least less focused, less intentional on questioning, on spending time stretching beyond myself. Instead, my days feel like they're a constant of how many tasks can I check off my to-do list? What all can I accomplish and get done in this day? And I realized something. I had the pleasure of being able to work in a Quaker institution at New Garden Friends School, a school that is committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work with our students and with our faculty. And as part of that, we have affinity groups, and we have a white ally group. And this past fall, we had a facilitator come in and do some training with us. And I had this moment of realizing that even after my kind of awakening moment in my 20s, of finally realizing my own white privilege, of mentally, emotionally, spiritually knowing what racism means for all of us, it was oh so easy to slip back. To not necessarily forget all that I had learned, but just to be less intentional. To become complacent. Because I can. And because there are honestly lots of things that occupy my mind and my days. I'm a mother. I have to make sure my child is doing well in school, that she's thriving and happy. I have to check things off of my never-ending list at work. We have to make sure the house is clean, people get fed, that very energetic border collie poodle mixed dog goes for a run or throws the ball because otherwise she will eat everything in the house. Yes, especially socks. It can all get a little exhausting, right? Because both of those things can be true. We can care deeply about racial justice, and we can struggle to manage all the priorities in our lives. And so as I kind of contemplated all of this, I thought, well, maybe that's it. Maybe this is the message today. The what's next? What do we do to keep our eyes open to the hurt around us, our hearts attuned to our own part in that story, and our hands ready to make a difference? I am a planner. I like to plan things. I tend to know what we're doing 6 weekends from now, right? And so this year I decided to make a plan for myself, because there's one thing in all those my to-do list, there's one thing that I desperately missed, and that was quiet. Intentional quiet. So I subscribed to this Year of Breath by writer Kayla Craig, who I had found on Instagram because, like the good Quaker I am, I follow her liturgies for parents, because Quakers love a liturgical calendar and ritual. But the first week of her Year of Breath, she started discussing Epiphany, the emergence of Christ in our world, the appearance or manifestation of something special. She states, when we're observing Epiphany, it's like we're gazing at a divine spotlight, illuminating the beginning of something truly remarkable. A glimmer of something that changes everything. I don't think change comes in these big, sweeping moments. I think there could be aha moments, right, that we remember when things finally click. Like Ava Gray as a young girl, when her feet finally left the floor and she jumped up into the air. But there were weeks or months of her kind of bending her legs and pushing her body up, her feet still firmly planted, trying to figure out how this jumping thing works. And then the joy when it finally all came together. We remember those big moments. We remember the story of Christ entering the world, of his death on the cross. We remember the story of Rosa Parks sitting on the bus and refusing to move. We remember Martin Luther King Jr. and his words. We remember what it felt like in 2020 to sit and hear those stories of Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and the blatant racism that still exists. But there's so much that led up to those moments and so much that happens beyond them. Beginnings, not endings. A glimmer of something that changes everything. The story of Christ's emergence into the world, the story of God's love and presence among us and in us, is a piece of that story, a glimmer. And we get to continue that story, to be a part of it. As Audre Lorde states, in order to be whole, we must recognize the despair that oppression plants within each of us. That thin, persistent voice that says our efforts are useless. It will never change, so why bother? accept it. What is that glimmer that we can hold on to? What is the hope that allows us to hold the complexity of the daily tasks and the desire for goodness in the world, that allows us to stay present and aware, to keep trying? Because I think that is the most important thing. To keep trying, to understand that sometimes we get it wrong, that this path of understanding privilege, of working to dismantle racism, doesn't happen just in those grand gestures, but in the regular holding and working towards something better, where all humans are able to thrive. As author Kate Bowler states, we are all seeing the truth a little bit more clearly lately, aren't we? Sometimes by choice, sometimes by force. Sometimes change is easy, and sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it asks everything from us. It is a strange thing being changed, being different than the person we were before, scars that tell the stories of pain and fear, scars that speak of survival, scars that remind us that we are fundamentally not always the people we were before. So if that's you in any way, changed by a different relationship, by the loss of someone, by the addition of someone, by the way that our lives and our fears have made our lives maybe unrecognizable, then this is a blessing for you. For when you need permission to be that changed. Blessed are you, dear one, when the world around you has changed. Everything is different now. Your body, your age, your relationships, your job, your faith, the things that once brought you joy, the way you existed in the world, the people you love and trust and rely on. Things have changed. And it would be silly to imagine that you haven't changed with them. You are not who you once were. All the mistakes and heartbreak and naivety and courage, and blessed are who you are now. You who aren't pretending that things are the same, and who continue to grow and stretch and show up to your life as it really is. Wholehearted, vulnerable, maybe a little afraid. So blessed are we the changed. We have changed. Our world has changed. Quakers have a long and complicated relationship with race, and in some ways, we were amazing allies. These are the stories that I grew up on. Stories of how we freed slaves, how we worked in the Underground Railroad, how we were active in the civil rights movement. And also, we did some not great things. We didn't allow full membership to freed slaves. We were often slow in our response to violence. We got it wrong along the way too. And we have to hold all of that complexity to learn and change. And this change isn't an ending, but a glimmer of hope, a glimmer of possibility, a glimmer of a reminder that God's work is not done, that we are not done, that what we know and what we believe is still in process, that we are still in process, that this world is still in process. And thank goodness for that. Mm-hmm. Some days we can't hold all of it, but we keep trying, we keep caring, we keep naming the places where we get it wrong and trying again. We listen deeply to the stories of others. We make way for a better world, not just for ourselves, but all those around us. As writer Madeleine L'Engle states, unclench your fists, hold out your hands, take mine, let us hold each other, thus is his glory manifest.